everybody. Welcome to the Canine Connection podcast. Today, Lauri and I are going to be talking about clear communication. I always go back to foundations. Every single class I teach, every single semester, in every week one, I have a lecture on clear communication and on markers and what they are and how to use them properly. And I swear, I don't think anybody reads it because I think in most people's mind, they're using them correctly and they're not usually. So what do I even mean by markers, right? So the most basic form of communication with our dogs is our dog does a behavior and then we let them know we like that. So a marker is, it could be a word. Yes, it could be a click from a clicker, right? It's some sound that says to the dog, what you just did is correct. You're going to get reinforced for that, meaning you're going to get a reward, a cookie or a toy. And then the dog's going to want to do more of that, right? So the most basic form of that is a sit, right? Even most pet dogs know if they sit, there's a good chance they might get a cookie. So they'll sit a whole lot in the hopes that that will get them a cookie. So when we use our markers, we have to, first of all, have a clear definition for each of them. So when I say yes, that means what you just did in the second is correct. You're done. So you can do whatever you want now, and you're going to get a cookie. I have a separate word, which is super creative, I think. I say toy, which means that behavior is correct. You're done. You're now getting your toy. And if you watch my dogs when I train, they are crystal clear in their understanding. If I say toy and I produce foods, my dogs look at me like, hello, where's the toy? And vice versa. So that means I'm using it consistently in a way the dog understands because they're responding to that. You will also see that when I say yes or toy to my dogs, they get super happy. Like their whole face lights up, their ears go up. They're like, yeah, I did it, right? Because they understand that I just told them that's correct. Sometimes I'll watch students and they'll mark. So they'll say yes or use a clicker or use some other wide variety of words, which is a little problematic. People don't stick to one word. They just chatter away. And I can tell because the dog just kind of looks at them with a neutral expression, right? So the dog's like, I'm not sure if what I did was right or not, or if I'm going to get something or not. I don't know. So it's super important to have the words you're going to use and have a clear definition. My word good means that's correct, but you're not going to get anything right now. So keep going, keep working, and your reward is going to come at some point down the road. All right. So what people do is they use them interchangeably, or they go, yes, 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 or they go good when they mean yes, or yes when they mean good. And it gets all murky and messy and confusing for the poor dogs. And they're just like, oh God, I don't know what to do. So it's something super easy that if you just sit down and write it out, and then pay attention and make sure you use it consistently and correctly, and watch your dog's face, because your dog is going to tell you whether or not you are, right? And if you're not, your dog is going to be confused, and it's kind of silly in the sense that it's super inefficient, right? So some trainers have said, well, it's okay if you don't use your markers well, the dog figures it out. Yeah, they do, but it takes 2 or 3 times as long, and it kind of becomes a little stressful, and it's not super fun for them because it's like you're trying to figure stuff out and it's not really clear, and you're like, I don't know. That's not what I want. I want a dog that's super confident, right? So I'm saying to the dog, this is the behavior I like. And this is what's going to happen. You're either going to get a reward, or you're going to get a toy, you're going to get a cookie, you're going to get something else, whatever. Um, so that is super important. And I am constantly getting on my students about that, reminding them to use their markers and to use them correctly. So I think it's just something we have to make a conscious decision to do, and to be responsible for doing that in our training and hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump in and just talk about the importance of, well, really how to create a marker, because some people may not know, like, how do I develop a marker? Um,
True.
so when I have my puppies at whatever 8 weeks old, and I start a lot of their behavior training by shaping, right? So I kind of maybe lure them to something, and then so let's say like I'm going to start teaching them a foot target with their front feet. So I'll lure them. They don't really have any idea what's going on. They don't know what a marker is. If they accidentally put a paw on that foot target, I yes, and immediately they get a reinforcer. So as I'm shaping the puppies or even a younger dog, and we're teaching all those little behaviors all the time, and we do lots and lots and lots of reps, you're what we call charging up your marker, right? So the more reps of that, yes, you're doling out, and they get an immediate reinforcer. Afterwards, then they start to learn what that word means, and that becomes a pretty solid marker. And like Petra said, it just has to be consistent. So if you pick yes, then that's your word. Like, so you can't switch to saying yeah, because that's not your marker word that you've been using. And the dogs, they don't understand that in our language. Yeah and yes kind of mean the same thing, right? So they kind of look at you like, what does yeah mean? And that I'm always telling my students, because they do that all the time. They'll be like doing something, and then I'll be like, mark it. And they're like, yeah, what was it? Yeah. I'm like, what is your marker word? Oh, yeah, it's yes. As their
Hmm.
dog's looking at them like they're crazy. Um, so yeah, charging up like either your clicker, like people will say charge your marker, whether it's your verbal or it's a clicker, especially when you're just starting to teach a dog or a puppy new behaviors. We're doing lots of rapid reinforcement with them. So that's the time, that's really where you start developing those markers. So that's where it's really important to be really consistent on what you choose as your marker. Um,
And
yeah,
then
and yeah, go ahead.
so we, in the past, like I would just say yes for everything. So yes, sometimes I do a toy. Yes, sometimes I do food. Yes, sometimes I throw food. Um, some people use a specific marker for every single thing. So I do use a separate one for food, a separate one for a toy, and a separate one if I want my dog to go get the reinforcer away from me, right? So like if my dog is sitting and I have the cookie or the toy behind them, I'll say get it, and they know that means turn away from me and go get it because it's not on my body. I just think that makes it more clear for the dog. Some people, like if they toss it, they have a different one. I'm not like super, I don't use a separate one for tossing. I don't. Um,
It
do
starts to get,
you?
well, not really tossing, but if I think like you said, if I always like, so if the marker, if the behavior's being told that they're correct, the behavior's correct, and we're stopping and we're ending, it's always going to be a yes. Like I know you just use toy as a marker, which means it's over, but the toy means you're going to get a reinforcer. So, and this can vary from people to people, but I always mark with yes. that means you were right. Game over. It's terminated. You can drop what's in your mouth. You can stop doing what you're doing. But then I will add a marker if I'm going to throw food, which would be yes, get it. And my dogs, as soon as I say get it, they're turning away and looking because they know I'm going to throw it.
Yeah, the only reason I started using toy is because my dogs would always have this moment of hesitation when I just said yes, where they're like, is it toy? Is it food? Is it
Yeah.
toy?
Yeah.
And so I just split that one up. I mean, toy and yes mean exactly the same thing, except one means you're going to get food and the other one means you're going to get a toy.
Right.
And they do like hold me to task for that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they're clearly looking at me like I was giving this seminar, and it's really hard for me to talk and work my dog at the same time because
Right.
I never disconnect or do anything other than focus on my dog when I'm training. So now my attention is split. So I make mistakes and I'll be like, yes, and I'll hold a toy, and then I'm like, oh God, I'm like, "Ugh, sorry, buddy, I messed that up. All right, I gotta find food." Like, because my dog just looks at me like, dude, you messed up, right?
Yeah. Right.
Or I would like break some other rule, and like a couple hours in, someone like raises their hand. They're like, why do you keep apologizing to your dog?
Because I'm messing up.
I'm like, because it's not fair. Like, I have to apologize when when I'm messing up, right? Because
Right.
they're looking at me like you're breaking the rules, and rightly so.
Right.
If you have a dog like Zaina, she'll yell at me, so it's pretty clear I mucked up. Zest just looks at me like, I don't even know what's going on. Like, what are you doing? Right? I'm confused.
I love it.
So, yeah, but but in essence, whether or not the dog's like, oh, she's apologizing, I doubt it. But I'm apologizing out loud because it's a reminder to me, hey, lady, like, get your act together.
Right.
Because it is my responsibility to hold up my end of the bargain, right?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is we teach them this vocabulary, and if we don't stick to it, they don't know any other vocabulary. So it quickly will become very unclear to the dog, and then it's always on our end that happened because we're not sticking to what they know, that clear communication, right? And I actually love markers. I get a little stupid with markers. Like, I love using them. And like, I love that you just, you're like, you split it and you're like, toy is your marker. That means it's over and that's what you're getting. But I got really into markers training ever when she was young, to the point where I was like, all right, I had her in heel position. And I wanted to reinforce her on her halt so she wouldn't be turning butt out when she was younger. So I put markers on she'd sit. I'd say yes. I'd say left. I'd say bing. 3 markers in a row, which meant she got marked yes. Game over. Left is where you're going, a directional marker, and bing is my right hand is where the food's gonna be. Like, it got crazy.
Oh my God, I just got a headache.
I know. But it was actually really good because she had to really listen. Like, after the yes, even though like yes means like same with my dogs. Like, if I say yes, you can see immediately that they know what that means. Like, their eyes light up, like they're so excited, they know it's coming. So she had to really listen to where she had to actually go get her reinforcer, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool.
I got a little nutty with it. Yeah.
Well, talking about, like, because you were saying, and I think the other part of marking that's super important is where we have the reinforcer, where we're storing it, like where is it on our body, where is it, period. And because that's going to have an influence on the dog, where it is and where it's delivered, right?
Right.
So a super easy fix for like a ton of dogs is just moving where the reinforcer is. So, for example, dogs that forage are often foraging because the human has the food in their mouth or in their right hand, which makes me crazy. I'm like, your right hand is never allowed to have touch food ever. But in any event, that draws the dog towards the source of the food. So the dog's going to go where the food is, right? Or the toy, right? So if the toy is under your chin, your dog is going to want to be forward and closer towards your chin. It's just how they are,
Right, right.
right? So something super easy, put the cookies in your left back pocket and feed out of your left back pocket. It in like a couple of sessions, foraging dogs are already back further in position.
Right.
Right? Where you feed is super important. So this is kind of another one of those things where I thought I was so clever because I'm always saying feed in position, feed like for healing. Feed in position, feed in position. So I'm like, all right, I have to be more clear. So I'm like, oh, I have the perfect thing. I'm like, take your left hand and it has to touch your body. So I'm like, that's clear, right? It's either touching or it's not. And then put it in line with the seam of your shirt or your pants and slide it down. People still can't do it. They'll still feed like with the dog, like over like 3 inches lateral from their body.
Yeah.
Well, if you feed there, that's where your dog is going to heal because they're anticipating where they're going to get the food. So they're going to heal there. So if you always, when you're teaching healing, especially when you're teaching it, feeding in position, your dog is going to want to be in position because it gets reinforced there all the time.
Right.
But just as people are sloppy with their markers, they're sloppy with like they'll have food in their right hand, in their left hand, in front of their body, feet out of position, and it just gets so messy. And
Right.
plus, it looks completely different. Like if you're teaching your dog to heal with both hands in front of your body with food in it, and then you put your right hand down and your left hand flat on your stomach and you don't have food in your hand, you may as well be standing on your head as far as the dog's concerned.
Right.
That's how different it is to them, right? Like, because again, humans are thinking in human terms. Dogs notice every tiny, teeny little detail.
Right. Right. And, I think a big one too that I see with a lot of students is they have a really, really hard time not moving their hands or bodies when they're actually saying the marker word.
Mm-hmm.
This is my biggest challenge, I think. And I think it's like, it is a really hard thing for some people. And I had to really clean up my marker system way back when I first started, when I realized what I was doing. I think because their brains, like they connect the fact that that reinforcer's coming right after they think it should come immediately within a second or two after the marker word. So they're already in their pockets getting their food out as they're saying the marker word, which
Mm-hmm.
means you're attaching all this body language to your marker word, right? So that your marker word really isn't that effective when you don't have all your body language attached to it. So you have to be really careful with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zaina is a perfect example because I can be all the way in the back of my backyard training her. I can say, yes, that's the important piece. I said it the moment her behavior was correct.
Right.
Then I can literally walk all the way through my yard into the house, go in the refrigerator, and get her a cookie, and she's fine with that.
Yep.
As long as she gets it. Because she understands that it's not coming immediately. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes I have to go get it. Sometimes her toy is laying at the other end of the yard. Sometimes I have no food or toy on me. We have to go walk somewhere to get it. So that whole thing of, actually one of my students just said something. What did she say? Like, Well, it should be like mark, and then maybe tell yourself a word like pause or
Right.
wait or something, then get the reinforcer out, right? Some sort of a cue that you can, so that you can help yourself. And I think it's super important to kind of practice it without the dog, because what's happened is they've developed a habit, right?
Yep.
Where they're like, yes, and they're like, oh God, and they're already reaching for the food, and then shoving it in the dog's mouth as fast as possible. And I'm
Right.
like, whoa, let the dog process the information, right? So I go, yes, and my dog's like, oh, I did it. And I go, mm-hmm. Now I'm going to give you the reinforcer that gives the dog a few seconds to process the information,
Right.
right? And think about what happened and what they did to get the marker. So I think people have to like kind of retrain themselves, right? First
Definitely.
they have to understand, oh, okay, then they have to come up with a strategy, right? So like when I first did this, I was mucking it up. So I would go, yes, don't move,
Yep.
then feed,
Yep.
right? Like, so whatever resonates in your head, do something that forces, or like, yes, then take a deep breath, then get the reinforcer. Like, whatever resonates for you that gives you that gap so that you're not like frantically rushing
Right.
and then muddying up the picture.
Right, because it's really like the reinforcer is important, but what's really important is your marker word, because that is your way of telling your dog that that exact moment where you did that exact behavior was correct, right? So it's not really the cookie that's telling them, so to speak. So I think people do think that. And what happens sometimes, why that's important to really try to watch doing attaching a lot of body language, get reaching in to get cookies, and is that the dogs. So when I'm doing something with my dog is working with me, like, so let's say we're healing and my dog is giving me beautiful focused healing. She's looking at my face and she's actually waiting for me. She's waiting and listening to hear that marker word. So, what would look different would be a person who's attached a lot of body language with that marker. So, say a person every time they went to go say yes, their hands were already in their pockets, getting out their food. So, what you would see with a dog, they would start to develop a habit of healing alongside them. And where are they going to be looking? The
Pocket.
pockets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what they're starting, that's what they're waiting for. That's become part of the cue of that marker, so to speak. Um,
I think what you said, which I'm going to repeat it because I think that's super, super important, is that the marker is the word. It's
Mhm.
not the cookie or it's not the toy. And I think that's super important because I think that's where people get confused,
Yeah.
right? They think the cookie or the toy is what's telling the dog they're right. It's not. It's the reward. The information piece, the most important piece, is the marker, right? So mark, and then after that, you've got plenty of time to get the reward for the dog, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and then the other thing is, and we touched on this in a prior episode, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this constantly, is your marker is only going to be meaningful if it's not buried in a bunch of other words.
Oh yeah.
Because if you're like, wow, yes, 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 that was so good, yes, wow, but your dog's not, it's just a gibber, it's just all the dog hears is, mah, 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 mah.
Yeah. So true.
So if you discipline yourself from the start, I don't talk when I'm training. I just say yes if I have a dog that I'm building their ego or I want to, really praise them. Then after the yes, I can go, wow, that was super, buddy. But again, if it's just a never ending run of talking, it's not going to mean anything to my dog.
Right.
right? But when I'm teaching something, I don't talk. I just mark. Or if I need to give a cue, I give the cue, right? I give the cue, I give the marker. Then I can talk if I feel this overwhelming need to do it. Or if
Right.
I'm doing it because I want to, jolly, like boost my
Yeah.
dog's ego.
Yeah, motivate them up. Yeah, I think that's really important to touch on. My dogs have such a clear understanding of the marker because I have used it so singulatory, without all any other verbiage involved in it. So it's clear as a bell to the point where, like, a lot of times I'm like, yes, or it's yes. And I can actually go, yes, so quiet in a whisper, and they have the same reaction to that marker because they're just listening for that one word that they've been taught, which is yes, and there's nothing else attached to it. So let's just explain like what really like what that yes means as far as like terminating your behavior. You know what I mean? Like, what does
So,
that mean?
so for my dogs, it means you're done, right? So, and this freaks people out.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
hilarious. Like it freaks people out. Cause okay, here's one that I do that throws people over the edge. Okay. My dog runs out to get a scent article. As soon as it finds the correct scent article, I go, yes. My dog drops the article and it comes flying into me because it's like, it's done. I said yes. That means what you just did was correct. You found the correct article. That's correct. You're done, which means you're no longer doing that task. So you're allowed to drop the article. And then my dog comes flying to me because yes means I'm going to give you a cookie. Right? Or if I say toy, they come flying out of the pile because they know I'm going to either hold the toy or throw the toy for them.
Right.
That blows people's minds because they're
Yeah.
like, well, your
That's gonna
dog's,
happen. That's gonna
oh,
happen to you at a trial.
yeah, your dog's going to just stand there and look at you, or your dog's just going to drop the article and come running back in. Yes, that will happen if you are not crystal clear with your markers and you're not consistent with them.
Right.
I never have that problem because I am so consistent and clear with my markers. Yes means you're done. You can do whatever you want. In the absence of that word, you just keep going. So I can yes my dog out of the article pile 3 times in a row. And on the 4th time, if I say nothing, my dog will come running into front.
Right.
100% of the time.
Right.
Same with the dumbbell. I'll yes them, they'll drop the dumbbell, blows people's minds. Or, God forbid, I yes my dogs forward off positions like where they're supposed to stay stationary, right? So, in obedience like command discrimination or signals, the dog has to stay there. And a big mistake dogs make is they move forward, right? So people don't ever want the dog to be released forward because they think that's going to create a problem. It never creates a problem for my dogs. I yes them off forward off those positions all the time. It's not a problem because I'm clear. If I say yes, you can run forward. If I don't say yes, you never come forward.
Right. Right. And that's definitely with you can say that for knowing that your dog absolutely understands that behavior that you're asking them to do. I think that's what people freak out about. When they say they're like, "Oh, what, aren't you afraid that the dog is going to come forward then and start creeping?" And I say no, because in signals, like Petra was saying, this is an exercise in one of the upper level classes where the dogs are left in a stand and we leave them 50 feet and we ask them to do position changes. So if it's taught clearly and trained really well, the dogs know not to move their front feet or not to move out of position. So as long as their dog understands that behavior, then and they understand their marker clearly, then it never poses a problem whatsoever. And that's what I tell people.
Right. So the problem lies when they're not consistent. And that's why it's so important, right? Because if you're consistent, and you use it the same way every time, then the dog has a very clear understanding of what you want and what they should do when. But if you're not consistent or you're not very clear with your markers, then it gets murky. Then your dog might drop the article, or your dog might come in because your dog's like, I'm not sure. Am I released? Am I not released? Like, what do I do? But if you're just very consistent, and I think part of the problem with dog training is there is so much going on at the same time, right? So if you're new to dog training, or you're just you're trying to get better, you have to worry about yourself, your handling, the cues you give, the markers you use, the reinforcer, what is the dog doing? There's so much going on at the same time, and students really struggle with that. So, I a few months ago, I talked to a couple of my students that are like newer to the sport, and I'm like, why is it so hard? Like, why are you still struggling with some of the basic things? And they're like, oh, there's so much to think about at the same time. And I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, because there is a lot that I do not have to think about.
Right.
Like, marking for me requires absolutely zero conscious thought. It's
Same.
habitual. Being quiet requires zero thought. Being consistent with my cues requires zero thought. So my suggestion, and I wrote a blog on it, was instead of trying to juggle all these balls in the air at the same time, pick one thing, one foundation skill, and master that to the point that you no longer have to think about it, right? So if you're a little bit sloppy on other things, but for the short term, for the next 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to really focus on, okay, these are my markers. I know what they mean. I'm going to use them consistently, and I'm going to make sure my dog understands them. And if you get that to the point where you no longer have to think about it, then you can take another foundation skill, work on that for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks until that doesn't require conscious thought, and then so on. And I think that's what people don't do, because
Correct.
they're trying to get better at all of the things at the same time, and it's just too hard. It's like you plug one hole in the boat and another one comes in and another one comes in, and you're just like, and all of a sudden there's like your boat sinking.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm
It's
done.
like total overload. And the other thing I tell my students too is, because I'll say to them, I'll be like, well, what is your marker word? And they'll look at me with squinty eyes, and I go, is it yes? I think so. And I'm like, all right, you need to get a piece of paper out and you need to write everything down. Like, what do you say for yes? What do you say for a marker, like a terminal marker when you're going to reward them? And then cues too. I tell them to write down all their cues, because if I ask, like, if somebody said to me, what is your, like, for command discrimination, what is your sit signal? I can whip it off really quick because I've done it so many times. Like you said, like, I don't have to think about it. But for people just starting out, it is a tremendous amount of information that they have to remember. So for me, even through college, I rewrote all my notes all the time so I can pass my freaking my classes. And that helped me a lot, like writing it down. And I'm a list maker. Like, I have to write everything down, else I'll forget. So I tell my students, A, you should have a training journal, and B, start writing down all your stuff and start saying them in your head and practicing them, because it is so important. And you need to be fair to your dog.
So random tangent, right? So a very long time ago, before computers, I went to secretarial school and I learned how to write in shorthand, right? Which is basically just a bunch of squiggly lines, but it's really fast. So I worked for this law firm. I think I used it a couple times, but I went to college later in life, so I would go to college at night. I took all my notes in shorthand. Then I typed them all up because that was like a review for me.
Right.
And then I had these beautiful typed up notes that were like almost verbatim what the teacher said. So like, yeah.
Yeah.
Super random. But it is important. I still write things down. And I think that, and I did that when I first started. I mean, I had notebook upon notebook over the years, just more and more and more notebooks, because that's how I kept track of everything. And for sure, being clear on your cues, right? Like that happens so often. If I say, what's your cue for this behavior? And you have to think about it and go, I'm not sure, then you are not being consistent. And then how is your dog going to know what you want? Because you're giving them different cues, right? My cues are so ingrained that sometimes I literally have to stand up and do it because it is so automatic. It's not even in my database at all. It's just like my body just does it. It just does it. So I'll be like, I don't know, wait, I have to get up and do it. And I'm like, oh, right, this is what I do. So again, this is one of those things where you need to either stand in front of a mirror or sit down with a pad and you need to say, for this exercise, this, or for this behavior, this is the verbal cue and this is the physical cue I'm using. And make sure it's clear in your head first and foremost. And then make sure you practice it with, I mean, I'm a kook. I practice stuff without my dogs like ad nauseum, like footwork. Back in the day, I bought spray paint and in front of my house in the road, I spray painted a figure 8. And I would go outside, and this trainer once showed us how to do it with a toy, how to heel with a toy in our hand. I will go outside in front of my house and I would do my footwork for the figure 8. So basically, I am heeling in front of my house with a toy in my hand. If a car came up the road, I would pretend I was walking to my mailbox. And then the car would like drive away and I'd go back out and do my footwork on my figure 8.
Yeah.
So shortly after that, my neighbors moved out. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
but it's true. It's so true because, well, if you think about like dancers and their choreography,
Yeah.
like they don't just whip out there on stage. Like they have to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse until, like, that's why it looks so beautiful and seamless out there. That's why, same thing with, you know, anybody who's at that high level and who has practiced it enough, it's flawless and it comes natural and you don't have to think about it. And I tell my students the same thing. I'm like, when you're out on your deck and you're grilling dinner, you should be practicing your footwork because that's what I do.
Yeah, so they should be practicing their signals, their cues, you know, their physical cues, their verbal cues, and their handling until it's automatic. Like I remember when I did agility, I mean, these things happen for a reason, right? Because I'd gotten to a very high level in field work, a very high level in obedience, and then I started agility. Holy Hannah, it was the most humbling thing on the planet. It was a disaster. A front cross, which is like pretty basic, foundational, like rear cross, front cross, right? A front cross, it just blew my mind. Like motor planning wise, I was like, I don't understand this like at all. So I had to practice it and practice it and practice it until my body was like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, how can I expect my dog to read a front cross off my body if if I'm doing something different all the time? And talk about having to be aware of your body. Because, like, if your arm is doing one thing and your feet are doing something else, guess what? It ain't going to work out.
Right.
If your arm shows one way and your head goes another way, it ain't going to work out. Like, everything has to be coordinated and together. And I always think this is so funny too, because like I come from an athletic background and I'm a physical therapist. So I understand like body awareness, motor planning, XYZ. I don't even know how people do it when they have zero athletic background
Right.
and zero like physical therapy, body awareness. You have to work 3 times as hard as me, probably, to be able to learn these motor patterns, but you have to do it because you can't expect your dog to know what the heck they're supposed to do if you're not doing it correctly. And it just makes me insane when whatever sport I'm in, and the person's so upset with their dog. And in my head, I'm like, it was totally your fault. Like, it wasn't the dog's fault at all.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just the other day when we were training together and I went to go jump ever over the jump for directed jumping and she came straight down the middle and you're like, you flashed your signal, which I did. But it's, you have to, the level of concentration and focus is like it takes to really make sure that you're handling correctly and consistently with cues and markers and everything else. It is, you really do have to appreciate it. I mean, like when I go into like everyone gets nervous. We all get nervous to a degree. But really, once I'm through the ring gates and I'm in the ring, it all washes out. I'm so busy thinking about everything I have to do to handle my dog and keep it as clear as possible. And I still muck it up, we all do, because if you're not a completely focused or you're tired or, I mean, it happens. We're humans. We're gonna make flaws. I mean, it just takes a split second, especially for some dogs, like Ever. If it is not clear, crystal clear, she looks at me like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, and like the other day, Zeta was really struggling with so I was in class, there was a lot going on, and it was open class, but there was a break, so I just did some quick signals with her. And then I went to do commands discrimination. And when I was doing command discrimination, I was only doing a physical because I feel like in training, when I just do command, a lot of times you can do both. You can give a verbal and physical cue simultaneously. And that is what I do in the ring because why wouldn't I?
Right.
But in training, I like to do just one because I feel like they have to focus a little bit more, right?
Right.
So I'm in class and I'm doing her command with just the signal, and she is mucking it up left, right, and center. And I feel like smoke's coming out of her ears. And I'm like, this is so crazy. Like, command inside out, backwards, forwards, upside down. Well, I realized she was like, well, wait, we did signals. Signals is stand down, sit, come. And then I was doing command. And because I was not using the verbal, she's so literal, she was getting confused. And she's like, wait a minute, is this supposed to be signals?
Right.
And she was second guessing. So it was super interesting because that she is a very unusual learner. Like she processes things very differently than other dogs. So I have to be so insanely aware of what I'm doing in training, never mind in the ring. Because if I do the slightest thing different, she's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Same with Ever.
That is not how this goes, right? Like, this is not like one time. Oh my God, she's such a nut. So I'm in the ring. I set her up. So articles were finished. So I move over and I set her up for directed jumping. So I show her where to go. So she looks out. And I'm waiting for the judge to say, send your dog. And he's not saying anything. He's not saying anything. And finally, I look at the judge like, what the heck is going on? He looks over. The person taking the articles out of the ring was having a hard time. I don't know what was going on, but she hadn't taken the articles out yet. And he shrugs. So I'm like, gosh darn it. So I say to Zaina, up here, right? Well, that broke the sequence. She was furious. She looks at me and she goes, and then she looks at the judge and she goes, so I look at the judge and I go, well, now you pissed her off.
Right. Because it's out of sequence.
Because she was like, that is not the order. You guys are messing up the order. And she was mad, and rightly so. And that's how she is. My other dogs would have been like, okay,
That's fine.
No, she is something else. She cannot abide. The ducks must be in a row.
Yeah.
So as a handler, there is 0 quarter for error, right? So that's on me. As a trainer, 0 quarter for error, right? Or miscommunication, because then she's like, I don't know what that means.
Right.
And then she's out. She's like, I'm out. I don't know what you're saying. I'm out.
Right.
So dogs like that are really good, as frustrating as it can be at times, because they teach you that you really need to pay attention. The problem with dogs like that is those are the dogs that people struggle with, because those dogs get labeled as lazy or as, they don't try, or they're not motivated, or they get all these labels because it's the dog's fault for not understanding my training method, right? Instead of realizing that, no, like, your information is not clear to the dog, right? So just because I think I'm giving her a clear cue, a clear marker, clear everything, if it's not clear to her, doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
So we talked about and covered a lot of material today, especially with focusing on markers and the importance of them. This is our, really important way to communicate with the dogs when they're right. There are also markers for when they are doing incorrect stuff, which we will talk about later on. But we covered a lot of material, clickers versus verbals, where our food is, with the importance of it on our body, so that the dogs aren't being reinforced incorrectly. The timing of the food doesn't have to be delivered exactly at the second that you say your yes word. So we have, right, Petra, we have a lot more to cover. So.
Yeah, so we have a lot more to cover, but it'll get overwhelming if we do it all in this episode. So make sure to check out our YouTube channel, because what we'll do is we're going to take some of the things we talked about today, and we'll make some little example videos, and we're going to post them there for you, and they'll be there for free. So that should help you out a little bit. So hopefully this episode was helpful. We're going to obviously have more episodes. There's so much more to communicating with our dogs, things like timing, splitting up behaviors, handling errors, but we want to make sure that we cover each thing thoroughly. So it'll just be a bunch of different episodes.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So thanks everybody for listening. We appreciate all of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, till next time. Bye.
All right. Bye.